Hi everyone, welcome back. Purchasing an investment property is a big decision. It costs time, effort, and a lot of money. There's so many uncertainties with investment property that landlords should always be looking to minimize their risks to make their rental more successful. Unfortunately, in my experience, I've seen a lot of landlords who don't understand how to leverage proper insurance for them and their tenants to minimize their risk. Today, I'm going to share the top insurance tips for landlords so that you are protected in your investment. For those who don't know me, my name is Catherine Lee. I've been an insurance broker for the past 12 years in Ontario. The goal of my channel is to help empower you with the knowledge about insurance so that you can protect what matters most to you. Tip number 1, property inspection. First big risk I see buyers for rental properties make is that they acquire the property without doing an inspection on the property. This is the first thing you need to do. It is always the best practice to find out all the issues you have with the property. In today's market, maybe getting an inspection as a condition could hamper your ability to acquire the property. But I always recommend my clients to get an inspection even after they already acquired the property, just so that you know the issues about the property up front. An inspection report could range as little as $300 to $1,000 for a medium-sized detached home to thousands of dollars depending on the type of building, but it is always worth it. When a claim happens, I've seen landlords saying they didn't know the issue about the property. This excuse is not going to work when you're submitting a claim. Ignorance is not bliss. There are certain expectations for a landlord in Ontario, and a landlord needs to understand all the bylaws in their location while operating a business and providing housing for paying tenants. A qualified property inspector would be able to tell you all the issues about the property and make recommendations to bring it up to the proper code. For example, it is a bylaw that all stairs have railings. I've seen quite a few finished basements missing hand railings. Insurance carriers have the right to demand those railings to be put in within 30 days of acquiring the property. It is a hazardous risk for slips and falls. The inspector will also look at property and look for suspicious signs of flooding in the basement or cracks in the foundation, which often are not covered if the water damage results from seepage. After an inspection, always get a full written report and save that document because it is your proof. Why? It is your proof of doing your due diligence as a landlord and as a smart investor. I typically recommend clients to do an inspection every 3 to 5 years depending on the house condition so that the document is up to date, especially if you're doing a BRRRR. If there is a lawsuit made against you regarding the property, a landlord can't simply just say, I didn't know because I recently bought this property. This is not a sufficient defense. Trust me, I've seen it happen before. However, if you have an inspection report completed after your purchase and document your follow-up actions to those addressed concerns, it can help a judge understand that you did everything in your power to keep the tenant safe during their stay and give you a better chance at defending yourself. You are proving that you are not negligent to your responsibilities and made all the proper repairs and met the bylaw requirements. Also, claims can get denied if you fail to meet the bylaws. Any wrongdoing in the eyes of the law is not covered. Number 2, does your tenant have their own insurance? Not many people know that there is tenant insurance for those who are renting. Most landlords aren't even aware that the insurance companies are working towards mandating tenants who occupy the property must have their own insurance. Why? Well, when you closed for the property, did the bank, the mortgage company, require you to have insurance? Yes, most likely. When the condo management let you occupy the property, like first the new builds, did they require you to have insurance? The answer is most likely yes. If a claim arises, the landlord's insurance covers the damages of the property and contents that belong to the landlord, not the tenant. The renovations or repairs of the property could take weeks to months. Where will your tenant reside then? At a hotel? The hotel isn't free. Did you know that if if, for example, if they had a tenant insurance and if the claim is a covered event, the insurance company would have provided an allowance to help the tenant pay for temporary residence somewhere else until your property is fixed. Also, the landlord's insurance will not cover the tenant's contents, which is their belongings. So imagine this, okay? A fire broke out in the house that you rented out for a family of 4. The investigation will happen, and I've seen a client where the fire started with a faulty wire by a cheap charging phone cable that they bought online that sparked next to a bed. Immediately, everything is damaged by the fire and smoke. The family of 4 is safe, but now doesn't have a home to go back to. They have to move somewhere temporarily. And even if they want to get an apartment or another rental, sometimes the lease starts 2 months out. Your choices are hotels or Airbnb while waiting to see what would happen with the landlord. The landlord, which is you, may not have answers until weeks later. Weeks at the hotel can be quite expensive depending on the season, which is why most insurances for landlords request that the tenants must have their own insurance so that the tenants will have coverage, especially for expenses that would occur like a temporary relocation, contents, and their liability. If your tenant didn't have insurance, the Landlord Act could be used so that the landlord will be responsible for the costs associated providing the tenant a livable home because you signed the lease with them. In Toronto, you may be in charge of their meals because food in their fridge is no longer good. You get the idea how it's going to cost. A small claim for 6 months could simply be like $20,000. Make sure your tenant has insurance because it'd be one less headache and it lowers your risks. Tenant policies could range as little as $300 to $500 a year. I always recommend the landlords to put it in the condition in the lease agreement so that the tenant must purchase their own insurance and provide proof to the landlord on an annual basis. Another suggestion is also to get their tenant to add you, the landlord, as a loss payee into their policy. You can request that specifically in your lease agreement as a condition. Get a good lawyer. In this case, if there's any changes to the policy, the insurance company will send you a letter directly. If the tenant purposely signed up the insurance to meet expectations but chooses to cancel the following month, you'll get notified. Just know that it is in your best interest to deal with a tenant that can afford buying a tenant policy. I find these individuals are more responsible, pays on time, and will more likely be patient with you during the hard times when your property is under renovation because they're not stressing out about where they have to relocate and repurchase their belongings. Having coverage helps. Number 3, maintenance on the property. Making sure your tenant is paying rent is not the only thing you have to worry about. Your job as a landlord is required to keep the building up to code and follow every regulation in Ontario Landlord Act. My suggestion is for you to invest your time and read those requirements and follow it. For example, the property has to be maintained at a specific temperature. It can't be freezing in the winter or too hot in the summer. Figure out your responsibility as a landlord and create an annual plan to inspect the property and provide maintenance, maybe even semi-annually as well. There's always wear and tear on the property. Here are 5 areas that most insurance companies require you to keep up to date. Roofing typically cannot be older than 25 years. The plumbing must be copper. If you hear high-tech plumbing, run. It's very hard to get insurance if you have high-tech plumbing, which is used in buildings between 1997 to 2005. These builds have more water damages due to high-tech plumbing, so most insurance companies are now not insuring them. They are listed as an exclusion for most carriers. The electrical breaker should be upgraded to minimum 100 amp. Anything out of this spectrum is considered a special case. Heating typically cannot be older than 20 years. Water heater cannot be older than 15 years. You should know this and maintain this property accordingly and do the necessary updates so that your tenants stay safe. It's good to be a proactive landlord so that there's fewer problems for your tenant and yourself. Less surprises. Number 4, vacant properties. Vacant are a big no to most insurance carriers. You must tell your insurance broker if you know a unit is going to be vacant for months so that you can arrange it with the proper insurance carrier that is aware of your situation and willing to accept the circumstances, especially during COVID. I know it's common for commercial units to be empty during COVID, for example. You may need to notify your broker because a vacant property, is on the list of exclusions during a claim. Why is a vacant property such a big concern for insurance carriers? Well, picture this. A house is not occupied. No one lives there. No one shovels the driveway, so someone can slip and fall on the property. They could sue the owner of the property for negligence. The basement starts to flood, but since no one lives there, no one even noticed it until days or weeks later. The damage is irreversible because the water has been there for days or weeks. Now here's a bill that would have cost $50,000 of repairs, but because no one knew about the water damage until days or weeks later, it's going to cost you $300,000. Insurance companies have all the claim data, and they know about a claim in a vacant property will cost a lot more than an occupied property. Generally, the insurance companies are not fond of vacant properties and consider them very high risk, which is why they're on the exclusion list. Be careful when you know there's vacancy in your property and reach out to the insurance broker right away. I personally prefer paying a higher premium knowing my coverage is there. Hiding the truth will not get you the coverage. At the time of claim, the insurance company will conduct their investigation and they will know the property was vacant or not. And if it is, then they're not made aware of it, your claim can be declined. What's the point of paying for insurance when you know that the claim can be declined? It's like buying no insurance. Number 5, fire measures. Fire claims are often covered, but it's also expected that you take preventative measures. For example, if you're renting to a restaurant tenant, you need to ensure that there is a fire suppression system in place with extinguishers in the kitchen and nothing blocking the exits. I've seen some restaurants where they pile the boxes by the exit during my inspection, and that does not go well with the insurance carrier. My job as an insurance broker is to record the truth and see if there's any risk to the business that could create a bigger exposure for the insurance carriers. I'm their middle lady, but I have to be fair in my evaluation as well. By law, every unit must have a smoke detector, but here's the biggest revelation that I've had in my career that feels like it should be common sense, but you'll be surprised when I ask the landlords, potential customers as well, have you replaced the batteries in these smoke detectors? How do you know they work? Is there an annual maintenance schedule? Often, good landlords would schedule fire alarm testings, checking smoke detectors annually, where they provide the tenants at least 24-hour notice before entering the unit, replacing any smoke detectors that are reaching 10 years of age. This is so vital to the property's security and safety. Also, my suggestion is that the tenants should have access to a fire extinguisher in the unit, depending on the occupancy. For an apartment building, the fire code suggests an update every 6 months, and there's a hose on every floor. This helps with mitigating severe damages to the property. A fire claim can be very damaging, and the time to repair could range for as little as 6 to 24 months. You don't want your property to be vacant and unlivable for that long. So something as simple as providing batteries to the smoke detectors annually and replacing the extinguishers on site could save you tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Number 6, pest control. Animals like rodents biting through electrical wires, living on site and causing a fire may not be covered under a claim. They are typically listed as an exclusion in your property insurance. Therefore, pest control is very needed and should not be ignored. Landlords should have that scheduled for at least an annual basis to check the building and do whatever it takes to deter these rodents from staying on their property. If your tenant's complaining about some mice issues or random rodents appearing in the common areas like a laundry unit, you need to act. Get a professional in and patch up those holes in the buildings. Get rid of those pests before it causes a claim. Number 7, organization, documents, notes, and details. If you kept saying, "Oh yes, I've done everything Catherine Lee has mentioned," that is great, but do you really organize yourself enough to write it all down? How do you keep your maintenance log and follow-ups or interactions with your tenants? Here's one of the biggest errors I've seen in business, especially for entrepreneurs who's also running as a landlord. You just use one email for everything. It's convenient. Unless you got an executive assistant who knows what to do organized through your information, I would highly suggest to separate your landlord business away from your other businesses and personal life. Why? It's simple, because it just keeps you more organized. How hard is it to remember one more login, but be able to separate those accounts? Being able to have your documents stored on a drive is crucial, but it shouldn't have your kids' photos or your doctor's appointment information in the emails. Do whatever it takes to keep it easy for you to organize your real estate investing away from other businesses. Your email thread should be viewed, and the emergencies do arise, there's expectations of you to react in a timely manner. Document everything you do, especially when it comes to complaints and issues with your tenants. The Board of Landlord and Tenant Act shouldn't be taken lightly. If you ignore those emails for a week long just because you're on vacation, it's not going to be good enough. Document, and document. After having a conversation with a tenant, there might be broken telephone. It's always the best practice to summarize your conversation by emailing them. Just here on the top of my head, for example, Dear John, as per our conversation, I'm sending out a plumber in the next 4 hours. If you haven't heard from Jane Doe by then, please let me know. We hope to fix the faucet and get the hot water running soon. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sincerely, your name. The power of that email response provides a judge, insurance carrier, that you did your job in trying to take care of an emergency. You communicated clearly what is the next steps. You are resolving it by calling a professional during an emergency. That is a competent landlord. If you got 10 plus tenants or doors, please get a CRM management system of some sort to stay organized, because it would help you in the long run when you're organizing notes, conversations, staying on top of entering things, to be detail oriented in your email and even text messages. Keep track of those conversations are crucial. Any interaction with your tenant should be logged in. For any rentals, I find that the tenants tend to call or ask for mundane things, like how to turn on a stove, shower, operate an appliance in the house. Look, even when I rent on Airbnb, I have those questions too. And also, you spend quite a bit of time trying to figure it out. Another smart way to do it is record a video on how to use it. If you know it's going to be the most frequently asked questions, instead of complaining how dumb people are, see the trend, create a solution, and that would help answer those questions faster. That's where you stand out as a landlord. You're there to help, you're fair, you're reasonable, and you know what you're doing. You got an apartment building, really good property managers provide a small document identifying the little things like where's the big garbage items going to go, what you're allowed to put in the garbage chutes, what access to the amenities you got, emergency contacts and information, have visuals and pictures, ideally videos. Just a walkthrough would be nice. Having a system in place is very critical for any business. Success is based on how good your system is. Number 8, not having enough insurance or not having an honest conversation with your broker or agent. In the beginning of all businesses, especially in the startup phase, everyone wants to keep insurance cheap by dodging answers to questions that are critical to the insurance policy. If you purchase those properties that has as-is conditions, just know that it's harder to get insurance for those properties unless you provide a proposal how long it'll take for you to renovate or other terms to rehab back it to proper condition. Insurance companies love honesty and competency. If you have a long-term relationship with a carrier and you have multiple properties with them, sometimes they make exceptions. But if this is your first business, it's not going to be easy to place with a regular carrier. Sometimes it's best to go with a carrier that would accept your special circumstances. That way you know that there will be coverage for that property, than to lie or hide the truth with another carrier hoping that the coverage is in place. But if you knew they weren't going to accept you as a client, if the truth was revealed, you're gambling with your coverage. That's a very expensive gamble when it comes to a property. How would they know? At the time of claim, inspectors will be out to check the cause of the claim. If the property has bad wiring and caused a fire, or the home shouldn't have been open to tenants because it's not safe, well, what do you think will happen? Do you think the judge will stand by your side and say, hey, Tom, I understand it's hard for you to start this business and I get that you're trying to cut corners, but the house caught on fire due to your cheapness. I'm sorry that you're going to compensate your tenants, your neighbors, and everyone involved in this incident. Oh, and guess what? Since you're a liar, your insurance ain't paying. Would you like that? Insurance brokers and agents are notorious to writing notes and has to submit in their perspective on how they quoted you as a client. If you lied or hid the truth, it will appear on your property application. You're going to have to prove that they didn't do their job or didn't ask those questions. But if they can prove that they asked you those questions and you answered it in a different way just to hide the truth, sorry, you are not in luck to pass on the blame. An experienced broker will ask the right questions and know how to read you. You're most likely going to dodge and try to find someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Here's another perspective though. Most landlords think that insurance should be cheaper as time goes by. I do educate my clients that the limit of your property should be increasing over time. The exact opposite, similar to the selling prices of real estate. Let me ask you, the property that was built in 1980s, what was the minimum wage? $3.50 to $5 an hour, depending which year. Based on historical minimum wage, took a big jump in 2017 from $11.60 to $14 in 2018. It's also the time when you start to see property insurance rise. Why? Well, let me ask you this. Those people in construction getting paid, is it minimum wage or not? Do you think the plumber gets paid minimum wage? No. See, the answer is that they get paid more than minimum wage. And the higher the cost to replace your home today will cost a lot more and what you bought it as compared to the 80s. One of the biggest factors in renovations or rebuild is the cost of supplies and the cost of labor. In the recent years, we faced major restructure in our supply chain for lumber in the past 2 years to electrical wire shortage. There was a waiting period to get stuff. You need to understand the basic of economics that will drive up the cost of insurance because we are paying for repairs and replacements on properties today, and it's not going to be 1980 prices. That's the misconception or complaints I hear. Factors that increase property insurance over time, minimum wage, suppliers, professional fees, debris removal, God, the list keeps going on. Any costs of today will always be more expensive than yesterday, typically. Life is getting more expensive and it's all correlated. If you're collecting more rent over time, expect the cost to run the business to increase over time as well, which is why insurance won't always be cheap. That is why I help my clients by providing perspective. Insurance is a pooled risk. The carriers use the stats, which is what it costs them to rebuild and replace damaged properties in their books. They rate it by the neighborhood and categorize their clients by industry. Aiming for the cheapest coverage will not mean you get the best coverage. So review with your broker, work with your broker to see what works for you. At the end of the day, insurance is meant to provide peace of mind, not chaos. Number 9, property standards that landlords must know. As a landlord, it's important to stay informed of the local laws and regulations in place when renting out your property. Many may not realize that, for example, Toronto has strict standards on residential units, which require landlords to adhere to general upkeep and safety requirements. By being aware of these basic standards, you'll ensure both yourself and your tenants will be safe when residing in your rental properties. There's bylaws on, for example, air conditioning, washroom, water facilities, doors, passageways and exit maintenance, hot water, pests, property cleanliness, room size minimums, ventilations, stairs and handrails, the list goes on. Most of these conditions are applicable to homeowners as well. Anyone who owns a property really should read the bylaws for properties, especially for those who want to know how to maintain it properly. For those who are seeking success in real estate, it is important to take time each year for comprehensive checkups on your property. By taking pictures and videos during this assessment process, you can quickly identify potential hazards that may have gone unnoticed before, giving lenders, for example, peace of mind when evaluating mortgages or the insurance policy associated with your property investments. Being a homeowner or a landlord requires taking the right steps to ensure you're eligible for insurance coverage. Unfortunately, many people do not take the action until after they file their claim, only to discover the lack of preparation, meaning no insurance protection or coverage. Home renovations can be a great way to increase property value and rent, but if you're not familiar with all the applicable bylaws, you could unknowingly put yourself at risk. Before making any changes or repairs, it's important that the owners have a good understanding of these regulations and even consider getting an inspection done to make sure nothing has been missed. For anyone who doesn't feel comfortable inspecting their property, seek professional help. Don't just be an owner, be a knowledgeable property master. Education is key when it comes to protecting yourself from risk. Start now by watching this video and stay tuned for more updates on how else knowledge can help secure your investment into its best shape possible. To summarize what I have shared, here are the common mistakes that I find landlords do. No property inspections or don't update the inspection in the last 5 years. Not making sure their tenants have their own tenant insurance. No maintenance on their rental properties. No vacant properties are excluded on most property insurance, so reach out to your insurance broker when you know it's going to happen. No fire or pest control measures. No organization or documentation, especially when you're having conversations with your tenants in regards of any conflict or issues. Not getting enough insurance coverage or being honest to your insurance broker. No property standards, not reviewing all the bylaws in your city or town. All of those listed factors are a recipe of disaster waiting to blow up in your face, causing financial pain in your... Let's not go there, actually. I'll just say it's not going to be a pleasant journey to landlordhood if you don't try to focus it like a business. Always make sure you do your own due diligence when you are investing in real estate and being a landlord. Thank you again for watching. If you are a landlord and you have questions, please go ahead and put that in the comment below. Please go ahead, subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss the next video. Bye now.